I've been looking forward to Toxic, directed by Geetu Mohandas, ever since it was announced as Yash's venture post KGF. A man experiencing such euphoria in theatres, having the courage to collaborate with an indie filmmaker, and mounting that movie as one of the biggest and one of the most expensive films is a wild swing to say the least. The film has been developing unprecedented interest ever since its bookings also went live, and I stepped in for an 8 a.m. show to see what years of work has eventually resulted in. I want to keep it as vague as possible because there are a lot of relationships and motivations that were not revealed through the marketing material. The movie focuses on the rise of Raya in Goa, a state that was still dealing with Portuguese rule after the British imperialists had left India. The state gets engulfed with illegal trade, abundant wealth, and warring gangs, and Raya, played by Yash, has the sole motivation to rule this lawless land, with Ganga, played by Nayanthara, being by his side. The experiences that he has both romantically and professionally as he rises up the ranks and cuts competition forms a major part of the plot. But as the trailers of the film has revealed, the biggest point of personal and moral conflict that Raya deals with is his child that he has with Nadia, played by Kiara Advani. The son is referenced as Ticket, played by Yash himself. The father and son conflict takes over as every woman, including spiteful exes, rage-filled gang leaders, and one's own allies go against Raya, developing into a battle that is no less than a straight-up war. This is essentially, if you can call it that, the premise of this extremely ambitious, wild, and unhinged film. I think I still have done a pretty good job in keeping the major beats of the plot away from you, something that we will actively discuss when we get down to a spoiler-filled review in a few days. So getting right into it, here's me telling you the good and bad aspects of the film so that you guys can ultimately decide whether to watch Toxic in theaters or not. The investment is clear in the frames. One of the biggest points of contentions and debates among film viewers, especially when they spend a lot of time and money to see something in theaters, is that the announced official budgets of the movie don't really become obvious when one sees the visuals of the film. We have been so scarred by mediocre CGI slop in these big commercial projects that it's such a surprise when you see the frames and actually see the investment. Toxic is one movie where the production design and cinematography genuinely seems like there has been an attention to detail in transporting us not only to a bygone era, but to recreate the sheer chaos that was happening in the state post 1947. The film visually looks stunning, especially in the portions that includes Raya's rise to power and the conflicts he gets into with the warring gangs. Goa takes the shape of a modern day Monaco, and it's a feast for the big screen. This is even true for the portions that represent Macau, that is representative of such a sharp rise for Raya. It is associated with pure debauchery and filthy opulence, and you can see the work that has been put in by cinematographer Rajiv Rabi and production designer Abid TP. Sadly, one can only appreciate the visuals for so long when they are subject to such disorienting editing patterns that give you a minor aneurysm. Even though the establishment with cobbled streets in which Raya sets his empire in does look like a curated set, there is something about the combination of the costume design, the guns and ammunition that the characters sport, the unpredictable nature of this lawless land that makes you feel like this is a gangster period piece, something that has not been done in quite some time in Indian cinema. I cannot contest the investment made in this movie because I simply see it in the frames. Mid and forgettable music. A lot of the music is representative of highlighting the relationships that Raya shares with the women he crosses paths with, specifically Kiara Advani and Sutaria. I must say that both the singles Tabahi and Madhosh are praiseworthy attempts at capturing the raw tension that the characters share with each other, but it never progresses into becoming extremely memorable because the characters themselves are not well etched out from a writing POV. Hindi cinema at least had a phase where pain, angst, and physical attraction was combined with rock music, something that was associated with films from the Bhatt camp, if you remember. Singles like Aadat or Garaj Baras, they almost had this rebellious energy, something that the songs in Toxic try to emulate, but you are just not as invested as you would like to be because they take the shape of montages like any other relationship versus a dynamic you are invested in. An editing pattern that moves along the story, changes locations, transitions to random action, and then back to the romantic dynamic. just confuses you more than emotionally investing you. Vishal Mishra and Tanish Bagchi have contributed to the music of this film, but it's not something that makes you want to jam the tunes or post about it right after stepping out of the theatre. Ravi Basroor is an active part of Yash since KGF and everything that is mass with so many movies. While I did love some of the choices of the score that was associated with Raya's rise to power in Goa, it does transition to become extremely loud and painful to sit through so many of the action set pieces and a similar trance-like beat in the second half. By the end of it, a lot of the music failed to create an impression because it just lacked purpose. Action blocks and glimpses of potential. I have to be honest with you, when I saw the first action sequence from this movie, I got worried on whether this will be the standard of the set pieces throughout the film. I'm specifically speaking about the action set piece that takes place in a cemetery, a glimpse of which you may remember was one of the first marketing drops from this movie. The action is inundated with Mokobot shots and money shots of explosions that just seemed lazy, with much of the movement being carried out by the camera versus the characters themselves. One of the worst action blocks is actually the ladies and ladies announcement that is integrated into the screenplay. It's a comedy of errors. I cannot believe it even made it to the final edit. Sometimes you are also disoriented on why the action set piece is even taking place. Who are these assassins? Which gang do they represent? And why are they doing unnecessary flips when they can easily just attack Yash? That ladies and ladies announcement was cringe when it was announced, and it's cringe in the film too. However, there are a few action blocks in this movie that genuinely impress me, and this specifically includes the circus being ambushed and attacked by individuals in the costumes of jokers. The camera follows the absolute carnage that Raya causes while trying to protect his boss. The entire sequence is associated with absolutely brilliant camera work and Yash engaging in a knife fight and gun battle that is immersive and extremely tactile in its choreography. There is also a sequence that involves both Raya and Ticket fighting each other, in which I must commend the technique with which they have framed and masked this double role. It's almost seamless when the two Yashes share screen space together. There is a point where both the characters through the snowy terrain beat armed men. The sequence just being lit by the headgear of the soldiers that genuinely made me commend some of the action blocks in this film. It's not perfect at all, but there are some glimpses that I did want to mention. I must tell you, despite what people may think about this movie, wanting to dismiss it as an outright disaster from the first frame itself, I was actually invested in the film in the first half. The horrid experiences of childhood that motivate a duo to rule the world, a consequence of every joy being snatched away from them, was very interesting. This, coupled by Raya's interest towards Kiara Advani, why he feels drawn towards her, and how it becomes a huge point of contention in his rise as a gang leader, till this point, I was actually drawn to the film. But there is just a wild and deranged path that this film takes, which progressively frustrates you, and one of the main reasons why you will sigh out of frustration is disorienting editing pattern and KGF hangover. I swear to you with all my heart when I say that in the first 30 minutes, you will literally be scrambling to understand what is even happening on the screen. It is no exaggeration. In quick succession, you will be introduced to characters, you will be provided their names, their possible conflict with someone, and immediately afterwards they would be killed, and you are to also understand the consequences of such cold-blooded murders. The movie just does not let you breathe when it comes to understanding the dynamics of the gangs in Goa post-1947. It just relentlessly, without any breath, provides you a quick context and boom, someone is murdered, and you just got to keep up with it. There are cases where someone is getting killed, the mission fails, and you wonder, one second, who is getting killed? Why was he the target? What was the reason for this mission in the first place? It's even more frustrating because the characters are emotionally reacting to the situation, but you don't even understand the gravity of the loss, because the editing pattern takes you on this random whirlwind without ever letting the scenes even breathe. You remember the editing pattern of that one chase sequence in KGF, where the sequences would often transition to a black screen and reappear with the visuals? Now imagine an entire screenplay being designed with the same editing pattern. It becomes very frustrating to sit through because you just feel like the makers of this movie had a lot of footage and they just felt compelled to compress it in a feature film format, making you assume that the story about warring gangs in Goa was supposed to be a web series of sorts, but they were compelled to condense it. I can still understand that the movie has to speedrun the rise of Raya in Goa, but when the makers apply the same rapid editing pattern for even Raya's origin story, having Having so many jump cuts that make you rather confused of what exactly happened, you realize that one of the main reasons why this movie will utterly miss the mark in resonating with viewers is because it is so obsessed in moving forward that you end up feeling nothing. You appreciate the visuals, but this incessant need to run like the Tasmanian devil just makes you raise your hand and concede. Because there is no way anyone has fully kept track of what exactly happened in this film with all of its characters. Other than the song Tabahi, you can't be taking pee breaks in this 3 hour and 14-minute film. You will miss out on at least 20 deaths if you do so. Surrendering to the vision and wild swings. As I previously told you, there was still a version of me that was invested in this film in the first half. I was in some way, shape or form actually connected to the duo of Yash and Nayanthara. Individuals scarred by their childhood, both the characters possess a deep sadness behind their eyes. Their tough exterior is a coping mechanism to survive in this harsh world, and both the actors do an extremely praiseworthy job through the initial minutes of the film. Barring the analogy-filled dialogues that get on your nerves, which I will come to later, Yash as Raya specifically is an interesting case study of how one's own demons catch up to them, no matter how much they try to suppress them through the means of women and alcohol. This deranged path of self-destruction was well performed by Yash, capable in the action set pieces, but even emotionally, when on the verge of destroying himself and becoming a sorry version of his former self, Yash shines. Self-confidence transitions to isolation and self-pity, burdened by guilt, and to see Yash being an absolute mess with bloodshot red eyes, barely being able to stand and form a sentence, I saw a man who committed to this wild, audacious and somewhat ridiculous vision of toxic. I commend the commitment. Kiara Advani also has glimpses of promise, especially in the ability to see through the facade of Raya, and how it makes him uncomfortable but even more drawn to her. I must say Kiara's dubbing is quite all over the place in Hindi. People were not exaggerating when they were trolling her for her scream in the trailer, but beyond an inconsistent dubbing, she is the only real emotional anchor of this movie that deserved more screen time. I hate that many of the women essentially became glorified extras because the film just had this urgent need to move on again and again. Relationships are established, they are broken, they are mended. Raya beats up bad guys, he has sex, there is an argument, there is an action scene, a new gang emerges. It's like, come on, can we just do one thing right and well? This film just takes up too much on its plate. Hammy performances, analogy-filled dialogues, and testing your patience. I did not connect with any of the other performances at all in this film. They are loud, hammy, and border on just overacting. Sutaria looks absolutely beautiful, but her performance is inconsistent. Her interest in Raya is sincere, but her deranged antics of hating his Casanova ways are very over the top. Similarly, Huma Qureshi is mostly looking divine in her dresses, smoking for the most part, and screaming and smiling, scheming her next plan, but it isn't close to being either devious or intimidating. Rukmini Vasant and her character appears in the second half of the film, and her integration of the story seems the weakest of all the roles written for the women. There is a frame that highlights possibly the reason why she is in the plot, but just like what the movie does throughout the film, it with this disorienting pattern moves forward, leaving you more confused than assured of her purpose in the film. The movie is filled with analogies. Oh my god, everybody either talks in riddles, rhymes, or are creating analogies of the animal kingdom. The dialogues literally get on your nerves, and you really want to shake some of the characters and tell them, can you just speak normally, please? The most irritating portions of the film, however, are associated with Yash as Ticket. I understand what Yash may be going for with respect to the theatrics of a psychopath, but Ticket is loud, irritating, and is possibly the hammiest performance in the film. There is a point in the concluding moments where the two characters are just screaming, and it genuinely tests your patience, making you want to leave, then be curious about how the story ends. I kid you not. You feel like leaving the theater because the conversation does not end and the decibel levels keep on increasing. But you are not even ready for the wildest part. The movie, with its climax, integrates one of the wildest, most deranged ideas that I'm sure no one expected. It's such a wild swing, such an audacious and ridiculous idea that you really conclude, if the movie was even marginally interested in investing in its characters versus doing these over-the-top theatrics to propel a movie as this big commercial, big budget movie with its locations, action set pieces, and nauseating editing pattern, had it stripped itself away from the pressure of being a star-led project that needs to be of a particular scale, this story at its core actually had the potential to land. It makes me actually conclude that maybe Geetu Mohandas had this core as the idea, but under the pressure of mounting a film as this gangster movie with hundreds of characters and motivations, it maybe just got lost. A case of what happens to most indie filmmakers when they are handed over a budget and a star. Things just go completely out of hand. Toxic and its swings are so wild, so over the top, and so jarringly quick that you end up being frustrated. Just frustrated after the 3 hours and 14-minute relentless ride. A 4-year wait after KGF for this. I'm just disappointed. And that was the video, guys. Write down in the comments below what you thought about Toxic. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram. The handle's right in front of you. Follow me at JammyPants4. Also, please support us by smashing the like button and subscribing to our channel for weekly content ahead. Thank you for watching.